All right, let's get started. This is the special meeting of January 27th, 2025, held via Zoom, and this session is being recorded. Would the clerk please read this statement of compliance?
Yes, Mayor. This is a special meeting of the Borough of Oakland. Notice of this meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6 et sec, by notifying the Bergen Record, posting a copy on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and filing a copy with the borough clerk. Public notice of the time, date, and location was provided, and details for public access to this meeting via Zoom are as follows. Time, January 27, 2025, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Join Zoom meeting at https://us02web.zoom.us/j/82870442496, and our meeting ID is 828-7044-2496.
Thank you very much. Can we please call the roll, please?
Yes, Mayor Kamala,
Present.
Council President McCann,
Here.
Councilman Pignatelli, Councilwoman Rose,
Here.
Councilman Saliani,
Here.
Councilman Slasinski,
Here.
and Councilman Talamini.
Here.
I'm letting another person in.
Okay.
Motion to excuse Councilman Pignatelli. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Right now, we are going to be open for public comment. Anybody from the public wish to address the governing body?
Motion to open.
Motion open.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Anybody from the public wish to address the governing body? Wendy, let me know if you see anybody.
Nobody's raising their hand.
Give them another 10 minutes, 10 seconds.
Yep.
I'll make a motion to close the public session. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All right, so this special meeting, we have one item on today's meeting. It is a resolution 2581 of authorized affordable housing obligations round 4. Obviously, Oakland and all the rest of the municipalities in the state of New Jersey have a dead hard timeline to have all our paperwork and this resolution passed by this Friday, January 31st. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our planner, Carolyn Ryder, so she can just tell us exactly where we are on the process.
Thank you, Mayor. Hello, everybody. Caroline Ryder from P&M Associates. I'm the borough planner. As the mayor indicated, we are on a deadline, an affordable housing deadline, the first of a few that are going to be forthcoming this year. This is due to the affordable housing legislation that was adopted and signed into law by your governor in March of last year. What the legislation requires is adoption of what's called a binding resolution by the mayor and council that stipulates what the borough's round 4 affordable housing obligation is. There is a formula for calculating the obligation that was so stipulated in the legislation. And the legislation also directed the Department of Community Affairs, DCA, to calculate obligations for all municipalities. Those obligations are referred to as non-binding. What is going to be adopted tonight is a binding resolution stipulating the borough's obligation. There is then a process whereby your affordable housing attorney, who is also on this call, is going to post the resolution as required and also submit what's called a DJ action. The DCA calculated an obligation, a prospective need obligation of 306 units for the borough of Oakland. We in our office and in partnership with borough representatives reviewed very carefully the data that went into the calculation of the 306 units. In particular, we studied what is called land capacity factor and the properties therein that made that up. Based on our analysis, we determined and calculated a different obligation for the borough, and that obligation is 252 units, 252. So it is the borough's decision tonight how to move forward with respect to its obligation, but it is, as the mayor indicated, very important that you adopt the resolution tonight because you are on a deadline of January 31st for doing so. I will note that failure to adopt the resolution, which stipulates your obligation this evening or by January 31st, could result in the borough losing immunity and protection from what is known as builder's remedy lawsuits. Once we get past this point, the next step would be then for the borough for us to put together and develop what's called a housing element and fair share plan. That's a plan where we will detail how the borough will meet its affordable housing obligation. That plan is adopted by the planning board at a public meeting with required notice, and pursuant to the legislation, the deadline for adoption of that plan is June 30th. So again, the timeline is very tight and we are all moving forward accordingly. Brian Giblin is our attorney, affordable housing attorney. Do you feel that there was anything that I missed or that we need to go into more depth on?
No, I just for some of the council people that weren't on the call, what Caroline and her company did was go through all of the vacant land or the alleged vacant land that the DCA thought was developable and take out those properties that are not developable for whatever reason. Some of them had easements on them. Some of them were, a variety of reasons. So that's the reason that she was able to get the number down to the 252.
Thank you. We removed 23 such properties for a variety of reasons, as Brian indicated.
Thank you. At this time, we have 2581 authorized affordable housing obligations round 4. Do you have a motion to introduce? Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Do we have any discussion?
Yes. If we were to if we introduce the lower minimum, is that present any risk from the state? If we're just they 306. So when we file this 252, is there any risk to the borough by doing that?
The only risk to
Go ahead. Thank you.
the only risk is that it is somewhat more likely that an interested party could file an action against the borough seeking to increase the number, but that could happen even if you stick with DCA's number. But the lower you go, obviously, the more likely it becomes that someone is going to challenge your number. I think, again, based upon the work that Caroline did, it would be difficult to challenge.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that.
I have a question for the record. Caroline, is it true that the requirements for what was considered vacant land that wasn't or was maybe to be included, is it true that these guidelines or requirements were set by statute?
So they were set by the legislation, which in turn amended the Fair Housing Act, if that's your question.
Yes. So we didn't have any input as to what those guidelines and what the statute requires, correct?
Not unless someone in here is a member of the Assembly or State Senate.
Right. So in
No.
other words, this is the state telling us what they consider our buildable lots are in the town, correct? Not what we think they are, but what the state thinks they are, correct?
Right. The properties were identified by DCA via aerial mapping prepared by the NJDEP, New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection.
So regardless of what we think is whether or not we agree that a particular piece of parcel is developable or not is irrelevant. It's what the state put in the statute, correct?
Yes, in terms of the calculation of the 306, yes.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Would we be able to show on via Zoom the map that we saw the other day? So maybe if the people that are watching the Zoom can see the land that's in question.
If that's what the borough would like, Brian, Mayor, is that what you all would like? I have that available. You can give
Sure.
us a minute.
Sure.
Robert, are you able to pull that up, please?
Yes, I'll share my screen.
So this is Robert Dare from my office, who's here specifically for this reason. Robert, you're sharing our memo. There we go.
So this is what's called a GIS, Geographic Information System. I'm showing an overview of Oakland's vacant land capacity. These are the parcels with vacant land capacity, and I can zoom in and I'll just start here.
When you say these are the parcels, you're talking about what's in red, correct?
Correct. What's outlined in red is a parcel with vacant land capacity, and it's the yellow areas specifically that have been identified by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs as vacant land capacity. So I'll just scroll through.
I'm sorry, Robert. I'm just going to jump in before you get to that. I just want everyone to be aware that this mapping was done statewide.
Yes.
This is a statewide process based on, as I indicated, aerial mapping from DEP, and it's not, and DCA provided in November, I believe, right before Thanksgiving, this mapping that resulted in the development of the affordable housing obligations. It was one of the 3 items that went into each municipality's affordable housing obligation. These obligations were released approximately around October 18th, and this mapping became available statewide. Again, it was sometimes before Thanksgiving, maybe November 20th, 22nd, somewhere in there. And Robert, am I correct when I say that the mapping was statewide? In other words, there wasn't a specific and separate map developed for Oakland and then Franklin Lakes, et cetera. We went in and carved this out.
That's
so to
correct.
speak.
This was developed from a layer that was published for the entire state of New Jersey, and I extracted it to show just Oakland here. And as Caroline said, the mapping was created from NJDEP, Department of Environmental Protection aerials, flown in 2020. And what they do is they run an algorithm on the aerials where they're looking at individual pixel colors and the average of pixels in a certain area to try to identify specific types of land uses or land covers. And the land covers that were used to identify vacant land capacity included several types of different forest covers. And in Oakland, we're seeing a lot of most of the vacant land capacity, if not all of the vacant land capacity, is really resulting from a specific type of forest cover.
Excuse me, Robert, the clerk has a question.
Yeah, we have a question from Mr. Sisti from the public. He's asking if can the public view the land that the state feels is necessary to build housing, or is it available to see at town hall? And he wants to confirm that the yellow areas are the areas that can be developed.
So the yellow areas.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
The yellow areas are what the state is saying is vacant land capacity. This is the land that the state is saying can be developed. That's not what the borough is saying. That's not what we at TNM are saying. We're just simply reporting what the state has identified in their analysis. Now, these yellow areas, this is what the state has identified, and we have stated in our analysis, we have determined that of these 29 properties in Oakland that have vacant land capacity, only 6 of them should actually be considered as vacant land capacity. And we've excluded 23 remaining properties from the vacant land capacity that we've used to determine an obligation of 252 units.
So we went from 23 parcels down to 6, correct?
We went from 29 parcels down to 6. We
29.
eliminated 23 parcels.
Very good, thank you.
I have a question. In that process of eliminating those properties, did any borough officials walk those properties to help in that determination?
Yes, it's my understanding that that did occur.
Who was that?
So it is my understanding that the mayor did for some of them, as well as your borough engineer.
Hey, Councilman McCann, Council President, just to answer your question, yes, it was myself. After we were presented the map, there was a lot of questionable properties, and we indeed did go out and physically walk these properties and find out, working with the borough engineer to determine whether they were developable or not.
Mayor, how many properties did you look at?
Well, after the exclusion that they took out, why don't we go to the piece of property that looks like Florida? It's up by 287 on the highway.
Okay.
You see these, Mr. McCann, especially all these properties right here.
Yep.
We walked this entire area up here. We also went behind 84 lumber, and the others, like you see on the bottom left, on the bottom, that's just the brook that runs behind 84 lumber, which obviously isn't developable. So after Carolyn made her assessment, and the ones that were in question, we did indeed go look at the parcels that required really eyes on and walking the property.
That must have taken a long time. Sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Yep. Anybody else have any further questions?
There is a question here by Bill. Is there any chance that any property in the industrial can be converted to housing, as what is happening on the Valley Road extension in Wade? I understand if you cannot answer because it's not the public forum.
Well,
Actually, it's not a public forum. Mr. Sisti's welcome to come down to Borough Hall tomorrow.
Yes, Mr. Sisti, you heard.
Any further discussion?
well, I think that even though it's not a public forum, I think I would like to know the answer to that question. Maybe our planner and our borough attorney can address, how overlays, how this all comes into play with our zoning, with affordable housing, if they don't mind giving us a 2-minute thumbnail
No.
on how that works.
So that's a great question, Councilman. Thank you. And as I did indicate, our next step after this meeting, this deadline for the obligation is preparation of what's called the housing element and fair share plan. And that is the plan where we are going to look at what is the obligation and how is Oakland going to meet it. And it's really important to remember that there are, within the affordable housing regulations, there are opportunities for the borough to utilize what's called a vacant land adjustment, which is a recognition that the borough does not have sufficient land to zone and or to build for your full obligation. So there would be there's a calculation and analysis that's done as part of that process, which is a process that the borough did utilize under a prior round of affordable housing. In addition, there's a process known as a durational adjustment, which is what municipalities without sewer can utilize, such as Oakland, as it addresses its obligation. So those are a few of the items we're going to be looking at. There are a variety of options to utilize to meet an affordable housing obligation. And I don't know that we're at a point right now to be, stipulating exactly what we're going to be doing to meet that obligation. But zoning is certainly, as the councilman indicated, zoning is certainly one tool that is available to municipalities to meet the obligation.
if I could just add, that for the purpose of this resolution and what the council has to decide tonight, the only question is whether or not this land is vacant land capacity as set forth in the statute. It has, this resolution and tonight's meeting has nothing, frankly, at this point to do with how we're going to reach our obligation. It's just whether or not the obligation is accurate.
Thank you, both of you.
Anybody else from the council have any questions for our professionals?
You know?
Not seeing any. I believe Councilman Saliani made the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Talamini. This is to approve resolution.
It was Mr. McCann who made the motion and Saliani made the second.
Okay, very good. Resolution 2581, resolution committing to DCA's fourth round of affordable housing, present need and prospective need numbers as modified. Roll call.
Council President McCann,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rose,
Yes.
Councilman Saliani,
Yes.
Councilman Slasinski,
Yes.
Councilman Talamini.
Yes.
Okay, this concludes our special meeting of today, January 27th. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned, everybody. Thank you so much for your time on such short. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Good night.